The Business of Art, brought to you by the Video Department. I don't know if you saw this episode that was released last week. The gentleman's name is Joe Doran.
Yeah.
Now I'm confusing myself because there's a prominent lighting designer from Richmond named Joe Doran.
Yeah.
My friend who I interviewed last week is Joe Duran, but it's spelled the exact same.
Wait, I saw it come through on my podcast thing, and I thought it was Lighting Joe.
Correct. I think I said something in the description just because I'm sure a lot of theater people listen. And but so what's really wild is Joe Duran's brother is a prominent Broadway producer who has worked with Joe Doran.
Of course. Of course he has. So the world's these big.
No, isn't that so weird?
I love it.
Well, I feel like that's a great soft intro. We're here with Liz Earnest, longtime friend, collaborator. Gosh, I have no idea when we would have met. Probably through SPARC.
I think it was through SPARC, maybe like through Brendan and Phil, that whole crowd.
Yeah.
I feel like when I started at SPARC, like that summer, maybe you had just directed You Can't Take It With You, maybe, if I remember. Wow. And like maybe you were kind of like wrapping that up as I was starting and kind of getting to know all those folks. Wow. And I think maybe that's like the first like thing I can put a pin in. I don't know.
I totally forgot that I even did that because I had just directed You Can't Take It With You at Maggie Walker like months before.
It was in your rep.
So yeah, like that second one was just like, obviously it's a completely different stage. It's like a 3/4 thrust at or at least the way we did it was. Wow, yeah, that was a fun production. That was great.
I remember seeing lots of fun pictures of Brendan doing lots of like hand acting.
I forgot Brendan
and having like a big mustache. I'm pretty sure.
Wow, I need to get Brendan on the pod.
Yeah, definitely.
Sorry,
he'd be a great guest.
Yeah. So let's just start at the very beginning. Did you grow up around here?
I did.
All right.
I grew up in Montpelier in Hanover County.
Okay. Did you go to PH?
I did.
Okay.
Yeah. So Allison and I rode the same bus for part of our childhood. And I remember when I was in high school and we did The Sound of Music, which I choreographed. I don't really know how I ended up in that position. She would like come over and I think she was bussed over from the middle school to be in The Sound of Music. And so like I knew Allison from like growing up, and it's just so funny how, those couple of people from your foundations of life you have with you all the way through adulthood sometimes.
Who was she in The Sound of Music?
I want to say she was Brigitte.
That makes the most sense.
Yes, if I am correct. She could tell you better than I, but I'm pretty sure that's right.
You'll have to, if you're just listening, you can't see that we have the newest Polson family member, Emmy, here, and now Bartlett's trying to make an appearance too. So.
Well, who could blame him?
Yeah, but we're just gonna keep all this in. So were you in The Sound of Music?
I was not. I can't remember how it all came around, but I remember like I auditioned and it was like the fall of my senior year. Maybe they did it in the fall instead of in the spring with the musical that year. And they were like, I wasn't much of a musical theater artist at the time. I was kind of more in the acting world. I'm still not really a musical theater person. I love it, but I'm not like it's not my skill set, I would say.
Right.
And so they were like, we can either put you in the chorus or you can choreograph. And I was like, I'll try choreography. And so I remember
cool.
I did that, and it's the one and only time I've done that, and it was fun.
That's a big job.
Yeah, it was a very big job, and I don't think I really understood how big it was until I took it on, and then that feeling of like, are you all not paying attention to what I'm trying to do? I'm your peer, but I'm also your teacher.
That's tough.
And that was a very interesting dynamic trying to manage. My best friend at the time was Maria. And so, like,
and this was like the main stage?
Yeah. Oh yeah. I mean, like this was the musical of that year.
That's tough.
I don't know why they put me in the position of being the choreographer. Like looking back, I think we had adults doing this at other instances, but I mean, one thing that in looking back at that, I think is sort of interesting is a lot of what I think about on a daily basis now is how you can put young people into leadership positions.
Yes.
And the benefit that comes to their development, their creativity, and their goal setting, and what adults can learn from young people by kind of having a shared leadership model. So looking back on that, I'm like, oh, maybe that's what they were doing. I'm not sure that that's, as much thought that they put into it. But,
For sure.
it's kind of cool to look back at that and think about, hopefully that's what I got out of it, I think.
Have you done anything with Maggie Walker?
I have not.
Because they are very much like that there.
Okay.
When I directed probably like 6 shows in a row there when Carol was running the program. And I just remember the stage managers, like juniors, sophomores in high school, would literally have like skeleton keys to the building.
Oh, yeah.
Just because they had stuff to do and they just were trusted. It was like the amount of responsibility that those students took. I remember walking into the first set build, because I would go to the set builds on the weekend, and there'd be like these sophomores with like huge power tools in their hands. And I'm like, whoa, this would not happen at Atlee.
Yes.
They would not be trusting those kids with those saws. Wow, yeah. And the results speak for themselves. I mean, most of those kids end up going to Harvard or whatever,
Right. I mean, young people are capable of so much, and I think that that's what can be so difficult for, adults and working with them is, I want to keep you safe. I want to educate you. I want you to have balance in your life. I want you to have all these things. And then, you understand that we're carrying, I think, all of the things that we were told as teens about like what we could and couldn't do, and then remembering what it was like to be a teen and to have that feeling of like, but I can do this, and how much you were able to achieve when somebody trusted you and gave you that that autonomy.
Correct.
And so it's really great to know that there's kind of this long-term, gradual, and sometimes I guess maybe more fast-paced, transition to putting young people in those leadership roles and saying like, here are the things you need to know. This is what you need to be successful. You understand the risks.
Yeah, we're trusting you.
I'm here for you. Let me know what issues you run into and see what magic can happen.
I think there is a very healthy sense of competition in that school. And I think that is a benefit of everyone. And the key word is healthy. It's a healthy sense. And so people want the responsibility because they've seen their peers have it, and they've just seen how the machine can work when it really works. And it's just all about setting an example. But we have kind of gotten into a participation trophy society in a little way, which I think kind of has, that kind of runs counter to the competitive. The competitive world, and it's all about balance. And I think that's Maggie Walker has a great balance of that, where it's like, you don't have to do all of the extracurriculars and stuff like that to be a valued member of the Maggie Walker community. But if you do a bunch of stuff and you're in the band or whatever, and you're playing a sport or you're doing drama, those things add up, and you'll get so many more opportunities to meet people. Like Foster Solomon was directing shows there, and it's like, so like they're getting to meet like real community members.
Yeah, I know Maggie Roop did Chicago there. I'm
Yeah,
sure.
yeah. And Carol Parasol, was the producer, for Pete's sake.
Yeah.
Where did you go to school? For college?
I went to VCU.
Great.
Yes, yeah. So I was I studied theater performance. I got my BFA there.
Cool.
And looking back, I've spent really most of my life in this kind of like Central Virginia area. And I remember that when I decided to go to VCU out of, high school, making this decision, and there were lots of factors that went into making that decision. But when I decided to go, I sort of had this feeling at the time of like, I had friends that were going further away from home, and I felt this sense of I don't know, like sadness, I guess, at feeling like I wasn't jumping into this like big adventure. But then I moved to Richmond, and Richmond, at the time to me could not have felt more different than, Western Hanover County.
Yeah.
I was like, well, I'm actually really glad that I'm only 30 minutes from home, because I think this is actually what's good for me. Like I had a kind of a hard time transitioning into my freshman year, and I felt really homesick a lot. And so looking back on it. You
stayed in the dorm?
I did. I did stay in the dorm. And so I was able to really kind of, immerse myself in that college experience. And that made it feel, I think, that much more real too. I mean, I'm sure living at home would have made it, it wouldn't have felt like the big college experience that I was really looking to have. But, all in all, I've loved living in Richmond and seeing all the different ways that it's changed. And kind of just being part of that whole journey from, moving here in the fall of 2008 as a college freshman to, here now in 2025, seeing all the changes, kind of like being able to be part of all of that and watch it happen and watch your friends form what's happening, and to know that in your own way you're forming that, I think is its own really cool opportunity.
What were some of the shows that you did while you were at VCU?
That's a fun question. So I think there are kind of two stages, at least there were at the time, two stages at VCU. They had kind of the main stage that the theater department formally produced things for, and then they had the student-led theater, which at the time was SALT, the Schaefer Alliance Laboratory Theater.
I remember that. Yeah. I don't think it was called SALT when I was there, but I definitely remember that.
Yeah, Schaefer. I hope, if they haven't yet planned a renovation for that building, that it is forthcoming. Because it can't have gotten better over time, I can't imagine.
No, it was in rough shape then.
Yeah. But I think the first things I did on the main stage, the fall of my sophomore year, I was bit part in Psycho Beach Party, which I remember most distinctly because they filled the entire theater with actual sand.
Yeah, I think I saw that.
Yeah, it was just like I'm just like, wow, how'd they get it in? How'd they get it out? I wasn't part of that process, but I think about it every so often, and I just can't believe that there really were tons and tons of sand.
That sounds not fun.
That we played in.
That's like
for that play.
Metamorphosis was probably before your time, but they did that there with
water.
The pool.
Yeah, I remember seeing the pictures and thinking that was just such a cool thing.
Pretty incredible. The designs back then were unbelievable.
Their technical theater program was then, and I think is still now. I mean, just among the very best. It's really incredible what they've been working on.
Yeah. And it depends on your class, right? You have to pick your season based on what you can cast and what's going to highlight the people that you have. I just like the shows that they were doing back then. They did Kabuki Macbeth. Kabuki McScottish play.
Right, yes.
But they brought in this Japanese director to teach like traditional Kabuki style theater. And I just like talk about having your mind blown.
Yeah.
And the actors that were in that all went on to like do incredible things. Like it was like a stud class for VCU. TJ Simmons and Clifton Duncan and Tia James. She might not have been in that show, but yeah. And yeah, I just like, I love that sort of like, and then right around that same time was when they brought in, I don't know if you remember this, they brought in the people from Romania. Do you remember Don Estrada, who was briefly in a relationship? Okay, yeah, we can. I don't want to air anyone's dirty laundry, but remind me and we'll talk offline about that. But they brought in a troupe of Romanian actors to VCU, and they were all so talented and just like so dynamic and engaging that they sort of like took over the Richmond theater scene for a year.
Sure.
And then they went back. But
it's a fun chapter.
My very first professional show was The Merchant of Venice, and this guy Don played Shylock, and was just like, he was way too young for it, but was so good and like so intense, like just There's been some real special theater in this town over the years, you know?
Yeah.
So when you graduate VCU, 2012?
Yes.
Has Theater Lab started yet?
So I think it was, if it wasn't that year, if it wasn't like by then, I think it was probably by the end of that year, like the next spring. I'm pretty sure it was like somewhere around that era of time.
And were you
Could
already
have been
in
as late
with
as
that
2014. I wasn't yet. No, I mean, I think I can't even really remember exactly how I got in with all of them. It was probably through DJ, if I had to guess. I think he encouraged me to come to their first, their kind of like cattle call audition for their first real season, which would have been at that time, actually I probably could put a finer point on it. That probably would have been like fall of 2013, if I had to guess. And so I remember like being in the lobby at RTP, like kind of waiting around for all those callbacks to happen and meeting people like Maggie and Chelsea for the first time, and kind of like people that I'm still such close friends with, kind of putting it all back to that one moment. So I was not among among like the very, very first people that got Theater Lab up and started, but I was definitely, I think, kind of in like that next wave of people that were involved in that first season and were involved in kind of helping to get the basement cleaned up and doing those work days there and painting and throwing out gallons and gallons of trash and looking at the creepy baby wallpaper that was down there because it used to be a children's shoe department, I think.
Really?
And yeah. When the first time I went down there, it was like this, like tattered wallpaper of, children frozen in time, like kicking a ball. And they're like, this could totally be a haunted basement.
I'm sure it was.
Maybe it was.
Yeah.
And maybe we like embraced that haunting to make good art.
I feel like almost certainly it was, yeah.
Yeah, but I would like to think that there's a little bit of that wallpaper somewhere that was like pressed in a book or framed or something, because it was just such a fun little part of what that space used to be, in terms of if you think about like buildings are around for such a long time and you just kind of like play your own part in you occupy it for a minute and you leave your mark and you do your thing. And so at one point somebody's mark was a shoe store, and at one point somebody's mark was a theater company.
Well, yeah, I mean that place had a rich history. I need to get DJ in here to like make an episode kind of like focused on that. But yeah, so you weren't necessarily like a founding member, but you were in at the early days helping, like you said, like literally paint the walls.
Yeah, I think that would be a fair association. Yeah. I remember going in for like a visit to the basement before they'd really kind of moved in, that kind of thing. It was like, oh, they had just found this space, and being able to go and be a part of all of that for the, I guess, 2014-15 season.
What was the first show you did there?
It was Closer.
Wow.
Well, that was at the former Manchester Artwork Space.
Okay.
Because they did that whole first like formal season there. Yeah. But the first play that I did at the basement, I think must have been
the Cockfight one.
I think so.
Is that what it's called?
Oh, it's called Cock. Yes.
Well, I'm glad I started it.
I know. And I think we marketed it with like the O was an asterisk, I think, because I think that's maybe even how it's printed like on the actor's edition of the script.
It probably has to be.
Yeah, but you got to go around and tell your parents you're doing this play. You're putting it out there in the world. Yeah. But that was, I think, the first show that I did there with a few others to follow. And that was another, actually, it's funny. I had this theme of like stuff on the ground, because if Psycho Beach Party was the first thing I did at VCU, that was a pit of sand. This is a pit of dirt. Mm-hmm. And it was fun because we started the play, people are being proper and polite with each other and everybody starts upright. And then by the end of the play, we were all like covered in this dirt, and like it ends with us kind of like, defeated and on the ground. And I remember like leaving the playing space after the show was over and looking in the mirror, and like every day I had like some different smudging and smearing of dirt all over my face and in my hair and on my costume. And
those are fun shows.
Yeah, they are fun. Like really letting the space transform you and not being afraid to really just like settle into the dirt and just think about like, if we're all being really nasty to each other, like how can I use this dirt to like feel feral and like connected to, to guttural human instinct and like being selfish and being nasty to each other and being hurt. What does it really feel like to be hurt? And like, how do I use this space to like ground myself in that? And that was in the round too. So that was fun because we had people all around because they wanted you to feel like you were in a cockfight.
Right. Does it specifically say you have to do it in the round, or maybe suggest it?
I think it was... If it wasn't suggested, I think another production had done it that way.
Right.
And I wish I could remember more of the details around it. And I wish I could remember to name the scenic designer who made these great choices.
Yeah, no, it was a cool set for sure.
Yeah.
I think that was that after, what's the one with Schaffner and Bianca? Hedwig? Was that after Hedwig?
Yes. Yeah. Oh, you know what? And Hedwig was the first thing they did in that space.
Yeah. So I saw Hedwig and then I saw that. You girls okay in there? Actually, one's a boy, one's a girl. So
gender's a construct.
So, oh man, have you done any outdoor theater?
Yes, I I want to say the one outdoor bit of theater I did was Romeo and Juliet. I did a production with, at the time, Quill, in maybe 2017 or 2018. We did the production at the Cheek Theater at the VMFA, and then it was remounted in the summer at Agecroft. So, I mean, if you have to have a singular outdoor theater experience for it to be at Agecroft, is just like chef's kiss, so lovely. That was a really special experience to do that there, and, you know, dealing with all the ups and downs that come with outdoor theater, you know, heat advisories, thunderstorms, jumbo jets flying overhead, trains going over the James River.
Bugs.
Yeah, the plenty of bugs. Humidity, getting your curls all going.
Without placing judgment on like whether they were good or not, were the costumes outdoor theater appropriate or not?
So speaking for myself, I wore a lot of dresses that were pretty lightweight.
Yeah.
You know, they're putting Juliet in a nightgown.
Yeah.
They're putting Juliet in a fluffy thing. I think I remember pleather. I think I remember faux fur for other people. Yeah. So that's not, you know. And it was a transition, right? It was like, well, we bought these costumes for an indoor play. So it's kind of like we've already, you know.
Oh, it was.
They designed the show for being, you know, indoors at the VMFA.
VMFA.
Yeah, just like the prior spring. So I think it was kind of like maybe a few adjustments I think were made to bring the show outside. But
was
I think
the
with
one
a
where
few...
Schaffner was Mercutio?
Yes,
Okay.
he was Mercutio when we did it at the VMFA. And then... Todd jumped in for the role at
Toad
Agecroft.
Peterson?
Yes. Who I was also in Cock with. So that was fun for us to get
Toad.
reunited.
Toad was the first person because Alice and I started dating in secret, and it was during the pandemic, so it was very easy to be secret.
Yes, of course.
Toad was the first person to see us in public.
Special honor.
We like went on our first date, and we like stumbled upon him, and he stumbled upon us, and was like piecing it together. It was so funny. So he holds a special place in the lore of our
in the history of your relationship. That's so cute. Where were you on your date?
I don't remember, but we saw him on Gray Street near Barcode.
Okay, yeah.
I don't remember where we would have been, but this was when we were living on, I was living on Main Street. So I was right, we lived right there.
Yeah.
So there was a period of time before the pandemic where I was almost exclusively working for either Virginia Rep, Theater Lab, or and VCU. Mm-hmm. And I could walk to all of my jobs.
Oh, how nice.
It was like over a year where that was my life. And only for like gigs did I have to like drive somewhere.
It's very cosmopolitan of you.
It was truly, I mean, I'm glad that I got that out of my system because now I'm a proud county boy.
Yeah, I mean, we live in Forest Hill, and so it's kind of like to get to any of the theaters, you're jumping in a car. Somebody's having a very good time.
No. Let me just go
He
check
says, I'm on the podcast too. Thank you very much.
So you're living in Forest Hill now,
Yes.
huh?
Yeah.
How long have you guys been there?
It's going to be 6 years in July. And we love it out there.
Yeah.
It's so outdoors and naturey.
6 years. Wow. Did you guys buy?
Yes.
Good for you.
Yeah. Which I feel very fortunate to have been able to do. And, you know, it's just been interesting to see... interesting to, you know, again, like I mentioned earlier, like watching an area change, you know, like in little ways. I'm like seeing that happen in Forest Hill already. There's like a huge apartment building that's going up down the street from us where it's kind of like right across the, on the same side of the street as where you all had that apartment.
Okay.
On the
Really?
corner where that SunTrust Bank used to be, the one that like had like the stone walls and was like flat on top, and it was shaped like a trapezoid a little bit.
Yeah, right there. Across
that's
from
gone.
Little Nickel, basically.
Yes, it's directly across from Little Nickel. It's one of those, like, I guess 4-story buildings where the top 3 floors are apartments and the bottom floor is retail. Yeah.
That's the only. I
I
think
heard a
that's the only thing
bakery
you're
is going
allowed.
in though, so I'm like,
Bakery?
bakery.
I thought you said bagelry.
Well, there is a bagelry that has happened further down Forest Hill. It's called Baltic Bagel.
Oh no, where?
It's kind of closer to Stratford Hills. If you're like kind of cruising down Forest Hill and you go past like the Food Lion. Actually, it's in the same parking lot as the Food Lion.
Oh, okay, cool.
Yeah.
Baltic Bagel. Baltic
Yeah, and I
Bagel.
think they're doing really well. We went one weekend to, you know, treat ourselves and try it out. And it was so slammed and we were kind of in a rush and so we weren't able to stay. But I think they're doing really well. So that's
good.
exciting because a little bagel place south of the river. Like, the people deserve a bagel.
Is it like a counter, walk up, takeout kind of situation?
I think so. Yeah. And it seems like they're kind of like offering, I think, like, since they're still newish in the last, maybe call it 6 months. I think when I've looked at their menu, it's been like, we're starting with like some predictable options, and then we're expanding on the things that we're doing as we feel like we get good at what we do.
That's the responsible thing to do.
Yeah. So I have a lot of respect for that.
So let's transition to SPARC.
We're not talking about bagels the whole time?
I would like, no, because I'm starting to get hungry, honestly. What's your favorite bagel in town?
Oh my gosh. Well, I haven't tried Baltic yet. I mean, I love a Nate's.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
Nate's is great.
I like to pop over to Nate's and get a little bagel sandwich.
So I have a breakdown. Chewy's, the best bagels.
Okay.
Cupertino's, the best bagel sandwiches.
Okay. Where are you getting those, though?
Cupertino's is a storefront. Actually, all three of these have storefronts.
Okay, I didn't know about Cupertino.
Cupertino's is in the West End.
Okay.
Best bagel sandwiches, hands down. Nate's is the best all around.
Okay.
So their bagel sandwiches are good. You know, I'd give them like second kind of on the other things. And so it's nice. We've got great options. If you just want a bagel, I'd say go to Chewy's. If you want a sandwich, go to Cupertino's.
Well, you heard it here first, Richmond.
I'm obsessed with bagels because I lived in New York. I mean, only for a year.
Yeah, that's fair.
But I had a very unhealthy...
High standard on the bagel front.
Unhealthy addiction with this one place that actually Anthony Luciano, who directed me in 2 shows at Richmond Shakespeare, turned me on to. And the combination of an everything bagel with chicken salad on it, unbelievable.
Who would have known?
You wouldn't think it.
Everything goes with everything.
Amen.
I shouldn't be surprised.
Amen. SPARC.
Yes.
How did you start there?
I was a child.
Oh.
Yeah. So
wow, we skipped right over that.
I know. We got right to bagels. No, because I grew up in the area and I was interested in performing from a young age, I was involved in a lot of different activities to try on different performing skills for size. And I want to say I was probably, if I wasn't in 8th grade, I think I was probably in 9th grade, but I was in that kind of, transitional age. And my mom, I think, learned about SPARC from probably somebody at work and managed to, at the time it was like a lot. We still have like paper flyers and things that we mail home, but I think she was able to kind of like scrounge up a little like paper pamphlet of the classes. We filled out a little form and like mailed it in. And so I think I started there in 8th or 9th grade, started with a core class, as I think so many folks have done. And then after that, I was moving more, I think, seriously at the time. I was kind of like, I was wrapping down some dance classes I was taking. I was feeling really self-conscious about singing. And so I kind of just decided that I wanted to focus mostly on acting, which really is the way that, those two things together, feeling self-conscious about singing, feeling less confidence about dance when you see other people get really good at dance while you're kind of like, I feel like I'm kind of middle of the pack here. Feeling like I think I really want to, sink in my teeth with acting. And so I started taking the Saturday morning studio classes with SPARC, and I took those classes through the time that I graduated from high school. I think I took my spring semester off because there was a lot happening when you're a senior in high school, but I took those classes for a long time. And I remember Saturday morning going for 3 hours at a time to these acting classes. I remember I had Lane Satterfield, David Sennett, and Ted Bolt kind of in rotation. We had some of those folks 2 at a time. I think there were some sessions where one of them, I think, was maybe teaching solo on the class, and there may have been some other folks that were part of the mix there. But I remember just feeling like for the first time that I was among people who felt like wanting to pursue art as part of your life was something to be admired and was something to be taken seriously and was something that could be real. And not only did the teachers feel that way and encourage that, but my peers did. And I remember starting the class with people, being invited to share what projects they were working on. And that was the first time that I realized that you could do a play outside of your school. People were doing things in the community. And I remembered feeling like, how do you even get started with something like that? It really opened my eyes to how much there was in the world of theater, even just in high school. And I really, I credit so much of my time at SPARC and in those studio classes in particular with, giving me this sense of justification that like being an artist could be real, and that you could find a community of people from outside your school that could connect with you and, share joy with each other and share projects and just expand your sense of the world. Like, there are other young people that go to other schools that only live but so far from me who also like what I like. I mean, it was just like, my paradigm shifted with all of that. And so, I feel like it was because of the extra learning that I received at SPARC that I was able to be admitted to VCU. I received a full scholarship to attend there, which I thought was really, was an incredible gift, at the time. And looking back, being able to do that was really life-changing. And then the next thing I did after I left VCU, like a summer job I had that summer after graduation, was I was a summer camp counselor at SPARC with August Adventure. And so I worked on Winnie the Pooh Kids and was a part of that for like 2 weeks.
Do you remember any of your, like the director, the choreographer, or anything like that?
I think Denai was the choreographer. That was the first time I met Denai. I think Ben Miller was the music director. And if I remember correctly, I think Sarah Provençal was the director, because she was working at the time there at SPARC in, I think, a few different roles. But I may be misremembering exactly whether that was her role there at the time or not in that director spot there. But I think from that time in 2012 until 2015, I didn't do too much with SPARC. I think at the time there, I was doing a little bit of work here and there in the theater world, but I had started a job at a marketing company, because I was sort of like, I'm ready for something that feels like I'm getting some regular predictable income, and this gave me the opportunity to have some free time on my own to pursue theater, right? And then I remember being dreadfully understimulated at that job, and I was sitting at my desk one day poking around on, I think, probably Facebook at the time, and I saw that SPARC was hiring for a role that was pretty parallel to what I was doing at this marketing job. And so I applied for the role of education coordinator. And over the course of lots of different interviews and, ins and outs, I started working in that position in the late summer of 2015.
Was Ryan who hired you? Or was he not
Ryan
there
was
yet?
the executive director at the time. Yep. And so he was there through, I guess it must have been like transitioning into the new year of 2022, I think, is when he officially departed.
And again, what year did you start working as the
2015.
Okay.
Yeah, so it'll be 10 years for me this summer that I will have been working full time there, and I've worn many different hats in my time at SPARC, which is very cool. I've moved. This is the title I have now is the fourth title I've had at SPARC, and so I've sort of moved through a lot of different perspectives on the work, and I've seen SPARC take on a lot of different shapes and sizes, and I really feel very fortunate to have come to this kind of full circle moment where I began my love of theater. Maybe not at SPARC, but I deepened it and found a new connection with it because of SPARC. And now I'm in a position to be able to encourage that love and that growth for a new generation of young people. And it's such a wonderful gift to be able to do that and to know that there's just something really special to hoping that you're the place that other young people had that same feeling I did. Mm-hmm. And feeling like, oh, this is my place. There's this kind of feeling that, oh, theater is for the outcasts and theater is for, people that don't fit in other places. But I think that at some phase of your life, theater can be for everybody. Mm-hmm. And I think we see a lot of that. We see a lot of people kind of just trying theater on for size. Mm-hmm. In a lot of different ways. And I think that they make their own memories and they have their own experiences and they make new friendships. And then we have people who really find their community at SPARC and really dive in and make that home there. Mm. And knowing that all things on both sides of that spectrum and everything in between is so so valid for your development and for your growth, and to know that, I can help to provide and protect a place that facilitates that for young people, along with, a lot of the other really critical things that come from arts learning, is just it's an honor, and I love it.
So where is SPARC now in terms of like its objectives? So when it first started, obviously much smaller, Ginny and Larry Brown, it was pretty much just like theater training. Then sometime around the Aaron Thomas Foley era, it transformed into kind of what you're talking about, which is the more like full, well-rounded, like arts education is not just theater training. There's a lot of different things. Obviously, live art was a big part of that. And that's sort of the time where I lost track of what's happening at SPARC, just because, starting my own business and stuff like that. But so where is SPARC now in terms of who are they trying to reach, and you may have already answered this. Feel free to repeat yourself. What are they trying to I'm getting ready to say, what are they trying to do with their students? But that sounds so stupid. What are they trying to, instill in the kids?
What kind of change are we looking to affect?
Yes.
Yeah. So a couple things, I guess, to sort of like zoom out. So SPARC, School of the Performing Arts in the Richmond Community.
Yeah, people might not know for sure.
Yeah, we were founded in 1981 by local actress Jerry Cutler-Volz. And so, we've been around. Actually, SPARC's birthday is Friday of this week. SPARC is turning 44, which is very exciting.
Wow. That's
and yeah, so, when you think about any institution that's been around for 44 years, you experience a lot of change, right? Like any person in 44 years, you would hope experiences lots of change. You think about how much the world has changed in the last 44 years. Think about how much our world has changed in the last 5 years, right? So there's a lot that I think comes from that in a scene in the way that we operate at SPARC right now. But you're exactly right that SPARC was founded in offering a foundation in triple threat training, acting, singing, and dancing for young people. And I think it started with kind of that focus on like middle and high school ages. And then over time, have grown to serve a wider range of ages, 4 to 18. And offering not just that focus on triple threat training, but on things like specialty focus on acting, on improvisation, on dance, on technical theater. Technical theater has been a really large focus of ours in the last 10 years or so. And kind of coming back to that conversation you were mentioning around the students at Maggie Walker who are like building the sets and holding the power tools. I mean, we're doing all those same things too, and kind of trying to help make sure that young people are involved in all aspects of what happens in a production. Their peers are on the stage, and so it's critical that we've got young people that are learning, not only the roles of these technical theater artists, but also the very real job opportunities that come from learning these kind of hands-on practical skills. So that's a big part of what we do. We have 10 separate programs now. So, I mean, I don't want to dive all the way into 10 separate programs, right? But, I mean, it does run the gamut from summer camps to after-school and weekend classes to audition-based programming to also include those productions like our plays and musicals, like the You Can't Take It With Yous of the world. We have our live art program that you mentioned, which is one that was founded specifically to be inclusive of young people with and without disabilities. In the time since that program was founded, the community, I think, has really looked to SPARC as a place for young people with and without disabilities to be included at all levels of our programming. So over the time since live art was introduced at SPARC, we have worked to better increase our accessibility for all programs. So we work to provide student support in classes where there may be young people that benefit from some additional, breaks, instructions that are given differently, having somebody to kind of help you maintain focus, somebody to help you channel big feelings that you may be having. And we also work as part of our learning through live art, but also working to expand the way that all people can connect with SPARC. And this is sort of a segue into your question about, what are we trying to affect at SPARC right now? We are trying to make sure that our programming is designed with universal design for learning in mind, which is this concept. Universal design generally is the idea from, I think it started with like architecture and design of physical spaces, that all people should be able to access a space. So I think the classic example is curb cuts in a sidewalk. That curb cuts in a sidewalk, those ramps that you see on corners, were specifically designed so that people who use wheelchairs or have limited mobility can safely use sidewalks. And what we found was that, over time, lots of people like to use curb cuts, people who use strollers, people who are pushing dollies with packages on them, small children, elderly people. I mean, like one curb cut that was designed to serve one particular purpose, when you zoom out by making one thing more accessible for a particular population of people, you actually made that sidewalk more accessible for truly everyone. So when you think about how that applies to learning, another example that I like to share with people is when you think about, I'm an audio learner, I am a visual learner, or I'm a tactile learner, trying to use all three of those practices at once is universal design for learning. So rather than lecturing about something and forcing everybody to keep up with you and listen to what you have going on, I've also got a packet in front of you. I've got an activity plan that's going to get us on our feet so that we can experience what we're talking about. And we're going to give you opportunities to, when you're responding to a prompt in this lesson, you can talk to me about it. You can write something down about it. You can interpret the instructions kind of as you need to in order to engage with the work in the way that works best for you. So a lot of that is something that has helped us to make our classes outside of live art more accessible to anyone that wants to participate, and has helped us to, I think, kind of also encourage kind of a teaching methodology where that is a cornerstone, along with creative youth development, which I'll speak to again in another minute, and looking to the Virginia SOLs to kind of help us kind of carve out that we've got an external standard that we're using to help make sure that in formulating lesson plans and curriculum development, that we know we are, working with people who are experts in their field, but we're also looking to some kind of external standard to keep ourselves on track. What should we understand that the young people are learning in school? And how can we supplement that? Or, how can we add to what is and is not there? And then with creative youth development, this is the idea that kind of harkens back actually to our earlier comments too, around putting young people at the center of all conversations and trusting that they are full and complete people who have dynamic and, sometimes difficult experiences in life, and that they are the expert on their own lived experiences, and that they may have information on things that you do not. And so giving them space to say what they want to learn, and giving them space to ask questions and be an active player in the learning environment in a dialogue rather than a monologue from a teacher. And in focusing a lot of these things, we're trying to also instill positive development skills that really touch on those aspects of creative arts learning that we know focus on working across difference and building community and finding a sense of self and building that confidence. And so creative youth development is this kind of asset-based approach, meaning you have everything in you that you should have right now as a person. There's nothing wrong with the person that you are. There are maybe challenges that you have that we're going to work through together. But everything you have is a tool. Everything that you have lived is real, and we're working with you to take all of that information and try to build toward a bright future for you, where we're using the performing arts as a skill to develop and hone those life skills. So I give all of that context to say that the people we're trying to reach are kind of anybody we can. We serve, I think, approximately 1,200 young people every year across the different programs that we offer. And depending on the program where you're engaged, there are different learning, outcomes that we're focused on for you. If you've never taken a performing arts class before, and the thing that you get from it is that you stood in front of your friends and family and you spoke by yourself and you made eye contact and you had body control. And when you came into this classroom, that was not something that you ever could have seen yourself doing, and that's success for you. And if you're someone who is, belting a high C and you've got your monologue memorized at any time to perform and you can kick your face and all these things, if success for you is being part of a sold out run of a show like Hadestown Teen Edition that we did back in the fall, then that's success for you. And so we try to offer sort of these like scaffolded opportunities for young people so that whatever they're seeking, we can try to provide. Our mission is to transform lives through exceptional performing arts education. And so that transformation, I think, is what I was just speaking to, that sense of, I never thought I could speak by myself in front of someone before, or I developed a whole new community of people that I never would have had I not been in this show. I developed a better sense of my direction as a pre-professional artist because of this experience. And we bring a lot of programming out into the community as well. Our Stages program brings performing arts learning out to third graders in Richmond Public Schools. We do programming at community centers like the Boys and Girls Club and the Robinson Theater. So we try to, really, really expand out into all parts of the community so that everybody can try on SPARC for size.
Who's the executive director right now?
Right now, our executive director is John Tong. He came to us immediately after Ryan's departure, so he's been with us for, I guess, about 3 years now.
Yeah. I thought there was someone else. I thought there was a female executive director in there in between.
So my predecessor and director of programs, her name is Evelyn Francis, and she joined us in the fall of 2020. So mid-pandemic, she made a big move down here from Boston and led us in the role of director of programs through, I guess it was November of 2023, because that's when I stepped into the role. And I guess about 3 years exactly. And she played a big role in kind of helping SPARC to refine that methodology that I mentioned a minute ago around those three kind of aspects that we use to inform our approach to teaching and our approach to performing arts learning. And that was a big impact that she had on the direction that SPARC was taking at the time. But yes, that would have probably been Evelyn that you were thinking about.
In terms of like business, I've been asking a lot of the arts organizations this. How are things compared to, let's just say, 2019 to now in terms of has enrollment gotten back up to pre-pandemic numbers?
It has, but really only just, I would say, this kind of past calendar year. So this is something that we've been working to do because the pandemic, nobody knew what they were doing when the pandemic came across. And I think everybody was doing their best to make the best decisions at the time for, managing in these unprecedented times, what to do, right? It really was unprecedented. And so we, I think in the last, the timing and like trying to put like a specific year on it is tricky for me, but the last, let's call it 2.5 years, I think, in really trying to recommit ourselves to building back. It took time, even after like COVID protocols sort of were lessened and we sort of resumed back into a little bit more of a pre-pandemic way of operating. It took time to rebuild awareness of SPARC, which, I think every arts organization is always trying to make sure it's like, do you know we're here? Trying to make sure that the community's aware of where we are and what we're doing and what we offer and all of the different ways we try to make sure our work is accessible. And, that accessibility takes a lot of different shapes. But I think now we are seeing that in terms of enrollment, Those numbers are matching, I would say, probably 1-for-1 to what we were seeing in 2019. If you count kind of our student body as a whole, some programs have grown, others have kind of deliberately been made smaller. But all in all, I think our community footprint feels similar, I think, to maybe what it did before. But I think, one of the challenges for sure, as with any nonprofit, is just kind of managing the nail-biting day-to-day of, how are you doing with your philanthropy, with your fundraising. I think there's so much need in the world right now, and I think the average Joe is feeling spread pretty thin across giving to a lot of really incredible causes. And I think we're seeing that that need and that feeling of stretched being thin across, arts and housing and healthcare and reproductive rights and immigration and all of these really, really, really critical causes. How can you possibly choose? I think sometimes as a person who's like, I can only give to one thing a month. You know?
Yeah.
So I have a lot of awareness of the sphere in which we
everything's
exist.
more expensive. Everything's about 30% more expensive right now.
Yeah, everything's more expensive.
Housing's way more expensive than 30% more expensive. But on average.
Yeah, in Richmond, I think our numbers are all over the place.
Yeah.
I think, during the height of the pandemic, weren't we like kind of number one issue for like, per capita evictions? It's awful.
I had a 1-bedroom apartment on Main Street for $750 a month.
Wow.
I bet that's $1,250, $1,500
Oh, I can't
now.
imagine.
So what is the future for you? Let's just assume you're going to put in 10 more years at SPARC, but after that, do you see what would be next for you, do you think?
Wow. 10-year plan. I do think sometimes about what it would be like to explore another part of nonprofit work. Whether that means, because again, like to my earlier point about there being so many, critical causes in our world, I wonder about, taking the things I've learned about working in a small nonprofit and applying those things somewhere else to another thing that I, am passionate about, that I care a lot about, and trying to affect change in another way. I think, there's just so much that is both exciting and scary about imagining where we could be 10 years from now, as a society. And I hope that when the time comes, I'll feel that clarity of purpose. Apart from that, I do wonder sometimes about what it would be like to cut myself open and try acting again. Yeah. I think, trying acting as like a more full-fledged adult could be such an interesting experience.
Have you thought about auditioning for anything?
I think about it from time to time, and then I get so scared. I think when I was working more regularly on the stage, I found myself feeling, every actor wants to be vulnerable to their scene partners, to life, to art, to all these things. And I think what I found myself really vulnerable to was judgment. I found myself being really scared of being judged.
By who?
By anybody. I think I have an anxious mind, and I think when you have an anxious mind, you experience one thing and tell yourself a story that may or may not really be there, or you don't even experience that thing and still tell yourself that same story. And so I kind of found myself assuming that that I wasn't good enough, that, a review that came out that said something about me was like the be all end all truth about something that I had worked hard on,
TV Jerry.
I truly don't even remember. I think everybody, I don't think anybody's been in a show that's been universally beloved and didn't have a perhaps purposeful critique or two. But I took those things to heart, and I really had a hard time feeling like I could look inward on my own and feel satisfied and comfortable and proud of what I was doing without needing that external validation. And so I think I've grown enough now to be able to manage some of that in a more healthy and productive way. And I think, too, like by just having gotten older, that you learn more about like really what it means to be vulnerable to life and vulnerable to art and vulnerable to people and to love and to fear and to I don't know, really, really invest yourself in the meaning of a story that comes from theater. And that's why I got into it when I was young. And then I complicated it for myself,
Yeah, I think I've talked about it on this, but the reason I stopped was because I realized I was doing it for ego-driven purposes.
Mm-hmm.
And now, and I'm coming out of my second like big break from theater, meaning like taking a break. So I had one where I was like, I'm stepping away. When I moved to Norfolk, I'm stepping away from theater. I'm going to focus on my film career. Got to Norfolk, did like 5 plays in 2 years. It chased me down. You know what I mean? Came back, kind of the same thing. But so anyway, pandemic, took a break. Now just starting to get back. And for me now it's about, like, there's a particular show that I'm getting ready to do. I don't want to announce it yet because it hasn't been announced, so I don't want to blow up that spot. But I was thinking about it today, and I was like, I love this show so much, and I want to honor it. Like, that's literally, I'm doing it because, well, dang it, if I don't do this, somebody might mess it up. So I'm going to do it myself.
Wonderful. Yes.
So I'm excited about that.
Yeah. And that's, I think, such an important thing to find in yourself is that excitement, right?
Yeah.
That sense of like, even if it's new, even if I might feel a little rusty, it's like knowing that like what you have is that excitement, that motivation, and knowing that like that magic of theater, which really we all know is hard work. The magic of theater is hard work. That you'll find that in yourself, right? And I think knowing that like you chose this project for a reason and not like, well, I have to work all the time because that's what an actor's supposed to do, to instead, have that sense of purpose is such a wonderful reason to get yourself back into everything. And I think too, and I mentioned earlier, like having that clarity of like what might happen in a career for me, when it comes to thinking about acting, I'm probably not going to be trying to make acting a career, right?
Yeah.
But like to find it as something that brings you that joy. If I see that somebody's working on something, or if I get a wild tear and I'm like, I think somebody should do this, and I'm going to like talk to somebody about producing this thing or whatever it may be, right? To be open to this idea that like doing it because you love it when you love it is just as good as doing it all the time. Or sometimes even better, depending on, kind of what your own motivations are.
We can't get into this conversation because it would go on forever, but no. It's just the idea of theater as a profession is a complicated thing, I think.
Yeah.
In America in 2025. In other countries where it's subsidized, basically, it can be more of a career, but it's definitely basically like you have to be, it's Broadway or not at a certain point. Like you have to be in New York at least to be a theater professional. You might even be working in New York, but you get cast out of New York and go to other parts of the country. And I think that paradigm needs to shift. That's just, doesn't make sense anymore. And New York's so expensive. And this is what Allison and I talked about. You probably heard on the podcast. Now theater has become, you have to be privileged to even get there because they don't pay you enough. It's in big cities, which are expensive. And so like, in order to even participate, you have to come from like some sense of financial security. Otherwise you're literally going to be, impoverished pursuing your craft. And as we know, as you just said, it can be all encompassing, especially when you're working on a show. Like if you work for a company, you're working on a show, you're there freaking 80 hours a week. So you don't have time to get another job.
No.
I'm sorry, I don't.
Yeah.
You want to comment on that, please do. And then I'll ask you our wrap up question.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, I think I would, yes and that and just say that I think too, I want to give, a huge, I know the people that you've interviewed on your podcast who, are working theater artists in like a mix of different definitions, right? So, I think
that's
it all kind of...
That's the point of this whole podcast.
Yes, of course. So, I think I hear what you're saying about like, you kind of have to go to New York if you want to be a certain kind of theater artist, but
to just do that and do that only as an actor, like to just be an actor. If you want to be an actor educator,
right,
then you have options.
Or an actor voiceover artist, or an actor, model, or an actor. I don't know. I mean, I haven't lived these particular career paths, right? But
not yet.
I know there are people who do these things, right, and make it work. So,
we personally know several who've gone on to do big things. Andy Nagrash, who was the original Beast in Beauty and the Beast. Did you know he's the voice of Tony the Tiger?
Ah, I did not.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, it's possible.
Beast to beast.
I mean. Touche. All right, let's ask you the final question, which is, if you were to give advice to somebody who, and you work with young people, so...
no pressure.
Yeah, no pressure. You don't have to answer from that regard, but you have lots of inspirations. What would your advice be to somebody who's in a creative field who wants to turn their passion into a profession?
It's probably a mix of different things. I think I would say... There's a song we sing a lot at SPARC. It's by Shakira. It's from Zootopia. It's called Try Everything.
Okay. That's good advice.
Yeah, I think that there is something to be said for, we support a fair number of freelance artists in the Richmond community who come and work as teaching artists at SPARC. And they will say like, I didn't know how much I would love this. And it's been such a helpful thing for me in coming and working with young people and looking at my art from another angle. And now I have this new skill that I can use to be financially viable. So I think, that's one example of what it means to try everything. So I would definitely put that on the list. I think I would say to try to connect with other people. I think it can be very lonely to be an artist. And that's, again, another thing as I was listening to some episodes of this podcast, one thing that I thought was so wonderful about this was that you are laying bare some of the things that I think people struggle with internally and alone and on their own. And I think by nature of whether it's listening to this podcast or, starting up some kind of, artists community coffee hour or whatever it may be, to kind of help people make those connections and to see what ideas start. I mean, looking back at what I know about like the true founding of Theater Lab was, it was a couple of friends with an idea, and they found more friends who were interested in that and formed this community, and this, new chapter of theater in Richmond was born from that. So I think finding people to talk to can take your small idea and provide it with oxygen and love and make this thing grow. And you'll find that by including other people in your feelings, either you don't feel as alone or you find that there's a there, I think.
Being alone is, and I'm a loner, but being alone too much can be a bad thing. It can have negative consequences, which just by logic, being with people can have really positive consequences because you have to get other people's perspectives. You have to feel their energy. Yeah, spending too much time solo is... Take the time you need, but find ways to put yourself, and this is important, in uncomfortable positions.
Yeah. Because
that's how you grow and get more comfortable.
Try everything.
We hate this word. Networking. You got to network.
Yeah, you do. And I think too, even if it's like, oh, you're having a hard time with this thing too.
Yeah.
Just kind of not to lean too far into the misery loves company of it all, but to just say that there can be, it's very easy to assume that other people are having an easy time. Mm-hmm. And, to an extent, you hope that for people. But I also think that to just hear from somebody, that like, oh yeah, I'm having a hard time with this thing too. You're not alone in this. This is not something that is unique to you. Like, you can keep on keeping on if that's what you feel like doing. I think that can be very validating too, to just know that like, you're not a rock, you're not an island kind of thing.
Yeah. Theater's great for that.
Yeah.
Theater's great for bringing people together.
Yeah. Even if you can just kind of like volunteer as an usher, volunteer on a build day if people want help with strike or with, setting some things up, doing some painting, just meeting some new people and sharing in a goal.
And they're always looking too also for like ASMs or dressers, and you could get you can get a little bit of money too to do it. Like, you don't have to just volunteer,
Absolutely.
It can be, especially for like a young person or somebody who is just looking to, for like a second smaller gig. Like, what a great thing. It's also one of my favorite things about theater. It's ephemeral. It's 3-4 weeks. It's done.
Yeah. Yeah. You can say, I had time for that. That was a perfect little fit for me. And now, I'm off to the next stop on the tour, whatever that may be.
Yeah. You get on a TV show. Who wouldn't want to? But you never know. That thing could go on for 10 years.
Yeah.
And like after a certain point, you feel obliged, like you feel obligated to like continue along with it. Certainly if you're like an actor or whatever.
Next thing you know, old Jed's a millionaire.
Yeah, well, good problem to have. But still, with theater, there's rarely that, unless it's Broadway, there's like no threat of it going on and on.
And I think that's part of what, I think theater people love about it is that feeling of, every time is different from the last time, even though the structure is the same, and that feeling of what it means to say goodbye to something that you've poured yourself into that you love, and knowing that like it's like snow. Like we've had a lot of snow recently, and I was thinking like, oh, I wish the snow could last forever. Like I love it.
Why?
It's so, because it's just magical. I think I'm a snow.
It's pretty.
I'm a snow person.
Yeah.
But I think
but then your classes get canceled at night.
Well, there's this. Yes, this is how we started our conversation. But then you think about like part of why it's special is because it doesn't last forever too.
Yeah.
Is that like when it snows, it's like it's only there for a minute, and when it's there, you leave your mark in the snow. You enjoy it with your loved ones. You soak up every minute of it that you can, and then it melts, and then comes the next moment, whether that's the spring or the next snowfall or just a dry day. I don't know. Maybe snow is like my preferred metaphor for what it is to be in the theater. I'm finding this in the moment, and it's resonating with me.
It is not resonating with me.
Well, to each their own.
I went to Mexico recently, and ever since then, I'm a beach guy. I was never a beach guy. Went to one beach. I'm like, oh, I'm a beach guy now.
Okay.
I get it.
This is your new personality. We're going to have to get
truly.
you a tropical shirt collection.
Yeah, that's true. No, I'm married into beach people. That's what it is.
That'll help.
They are the type of people who will go to the beach, and the only thing they do is sit on the beach every day for 6-7 days. And I just did not grow up into that type of family. So
but I'm scared of the sun. So.
Yes, well, the sun is very tricky. I heard something very recently that you are much less likely to sunburn if you don't wear sunglasses, which I'm going to try next time that there's actually some sun.
Tell me more about this.
It's because the sun getting in your eyes, whatever's happening to your skin that is making it like actually burn, the effect that it has. I don't know if you've heard it recently. There's this guy, Andrew Huberman, like is all about sunlight in the eyes. Like it's like one of the 3 things you can do to like make your life more healthy is get sunlight in your eyes when it's just peeking over the horizon in the morning and when it's going over the horizon in the evening. And this is related to that. I don't know if it's true, but I'm going to try it out. I'm going to try to, because who doesn't put on sunglasses when they're going out to the beach? You almost kind of have to. But now knowing what I know, that sunlight in your eyes specifically, and vitamin D in general, is very important for your health. So. But
not like
science.
Indefinitely.
No, of course not.
Like you do it for 5 minutes and then you put your sunglasses on.
Well, yes. Well, no. I think, no. I think you do it for 5 to 15 minutes, you get in the shade. That's what I have.
Well, if you're in the shade already, as I am,
right,
and you're wearing sunglasses,
then you're fine. Fine. Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
I'm gonna have to do some
research on that.
Do some offline research.
Back me up. Or
I'm just trying to make sure I know what I'm supposed to be doing with all of this.
Yes.
But I think
the fair-skinned folk.
Yeah. I feel like the only other thing I would say about the passion to profession thing is to just like be okay with it, like looking like whatever it looks like. Like nobody else's definition of what it means to be an artist needs to be your same definition. And I think that that's what can catch people up sometimes too, is just feeling like I'm supposed to be if I'm an artist, I'm meant to be, whether, like I said earlier, whether I'm working all the time or I do 2 big projects a year or I'm well known by everyone in my community or whatever it is, to just like whatever brings you joy and is like meets your definition of what you need to feel fulfilled and connected in this life. Like, we have too little time to like spend your time running around trying to be be someone that you think people want you to be. And I think that just comes down to like just knowing yourself and being vulnerable to trying on lots of different things and seeing what sticks and being okay with saying, nah, not that. Let's try the next thing. So I hope that that's what people, young people or people at any stage of life are always able to tell themselves, is to say like, I'm ready for a transformation. This isn't suiting me anymore. I need something else, and I'm okay with that. And I know that what I'm seeking now is going to be what's right for me, and that's enough.
I think that's a good place to stop. Liz Earnest, thank you so much for being on the pod.
Thank you for having me. It was a delight.